always scared to take a drink of water at first because I don't want to be on tape. Cut the water on my head.
I didn't get it. I didn't get it. I may have had you slide it back under.
Well, if you've looked in the bulletin this morning, I hope you're not turned off by the title of the sermon this morning. You see, I grew up in a fundamentalist church, in a fundamentalist community, with fundamentalist relatives, fundamentalist neighbors, fundamentalist friends. I guess you could just say I grew up fundamentalist. I almost feel this morning like I'm standing up before you as a friend of Bill, saying, "Hi, my name is Steve, and I'm a fundamentalist." And y'all are supposed to say,
"Hi, Steve."
Hi, Steve. Somewhere along the way, different denominations and popular theologians have somehow hijacked the term fundamentalist, and they've made it a bad thing. Bad thing. You know, I still wrestle with being called a fundamentalist because of what other people who call themselves fundamentalists have done to the name and the reputation to those of us who wish to be called fundamentalists, because we have a fundamental belief in Jesus Christ and what Christianity stands for. And there are people out there that have warped it into some craziness. And so I still, to this day, have trouble calling myself fundamentalist out loud. You know, as I studied the lectionary passages this week, they're all very close and interwoven. Jeremiah, Psalms, Proverbs, the passage from Luke and the passage from Hebrews, and they're so close and they all have a common thread running through them. But I really chose Hebrews this morning to defend my position. And so if you'd like to follow along with me, I'm actually going to read from Hebrews. The last chapter in the letter to the Hebrews is the 13th chapter of Hebrews. We're going to read verses 1 through 8, and then we're going to drop down and catch verses 15 and 16. So now I invite you to hear the Word of God. Keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Continue to remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure for God. For God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. Keep your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have, because God has said, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." So we say with confidence, "The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of the way of life and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Now we drop down to verse 15 and we read these words. Through Jesus, therefore, let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of lips that openly profess His name. And do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices God is pleased. This ends our reading for today, and this is the Word of God, and it can be trusted. Thanks be to God. Now, growing up in the church as I did, I will admit that I found church rules and regulations to be quite restrictive. Some would even say they were oppressive. And I'm sure there are people sitting here this morning who went to similar churches that found the rules and regulations impossible to follow. I found the rules of my church, even though it was a very modern church for its time, to be very exclusionary instead of inclusive. It was more concerned about who we kept out than who we brought in. And as a result, I drifted away from the church for many years. I didn't drift away from my belief in God. I never once doubted my salvation through Jesus Christ. But I did drift away from the church. Because it seemed to me in that church that the veil that hung between the Holy of Holies and the temple, that was ripped by God's own hands from top to bottom when Jesus Christ was crucified, kept being re-sewn together and re-hung each and every week. Because we wanted to keep some people out, and yet others were welcomed in. This church had a reliable reputation for making it quite obvious if you belonged there or not. If you had the right name or lived in the right neighborhood, or with the right color of skin, or the right sexual orientation, then you were welcome there. If you had the 2.5 kids and the station wagon and the dog, this was the church for you. If you didn't quite fit that mold, you might want to look down the street. Here, there's a good Methodist church down there. There's a whole lot of talk about love, grace, forgiveness. I didn't see a lot of actions that went along with it. There were all these little envelopes every year. Lottie Moon, Annie Armstrong, Mrs. J.D. Chapman. We're going to take up money and save the savages, but by golly, let's not worry about the Latino immigrants that are moving into our neighborhood. We'll let them be hungry. But we'll make sure that somebody that we know no name for and have no chance of having a relationship with have that money. So I found myself feeling more like a first century Christian who had this inner turmoil going on inside of them, because here I was having trouble reconciling what I was being taught about Jesus and what Jesus wanted me to do and who Jesus wanted me to be. And the comfort that I find in this passage helped me reconcile that. Because I was hearing all about who Jesus called me to be as a Christian, and I didn't see it in action. Sure, put your money in the plate. Watch the slides from the missionary that comes on Sunday nights. That's about it. Then go live your life. And that turmoil tore me up for years. I don't know if any of you felt that growing up. But if you did, I hope you'll find comfort in this passage from Hebrews 2. Because for me, these verses that I just read form the basis of true fundamentalism. I want you to toss aside this morning whatever it was that was ingrained in you as a child. And if you truly were a fundamentalist, toss that aside for a moment and listen to the encouraging words from Hebrews, because I find it to be very fundamental to what Jesus taught us. The author of the letter gives us 6 basic fundamentals for following Christ. First and foremost, we just have to love each other. We just have to love each other. You know, Jesus, he made it real simple. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and body, and love your neighbor as yourself. If you do those 2 things, that's all that it takes. Love God, love each other. It all boils down to love. You know, the early Christians found support as they met in each other's homes, and they knew what loving each other was all about, because they didn't know who was going to be yanked up and imprisoned or yanked up and killed. They didn't have much because they were under Roman oppression. They didn't know who had food this week and who didn't. So they had to love each other. They had to make sure that they got along. They did it by loving each other. Now here today, loving each other doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. I'll tell you right now, Jack and I, we are as diametrically opposed politically as any two people in this congregation. And I love him as my brother. And we're very verbal about how we disagree with each other. But we do it in love.
You'll see right one of these days.
So will he. You know, loving each other doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything, but it does define how we disagree with each other, and it defines how we learn to share and accept one another. Because every single one of us, whether we admit it or not, are flawed human beings.
Amen.
We're all broken pots, and we can all be used. If you don't believe me, ask God. You know, what's true in most Hebrew writing, when they give you a list of things, because the very most important thing comes first, or it comes at the end because it sums up everything that has just been said. In this instance, the Hebrew writer put it first. Love one another. Fundamental to being a Christian. Next, we're told, show hospitality to strangers. Show hospitality to strangers. In other words, we are not this insulated, locked up, bound up community focused only on what we want or how our needs are met. Let me ask you this. Think about it. You don't have to answer me. Just think about it in your heart. When we do passing of the peace, after communion, you immediately turn to those people you know, people you're comfortable hugging and shaking hands with. Want to find out where they went to dinner last night? Or do you immediately walk over to the first-time visitor who's never been here before and give them a handshake or a hug and say, we're so glad you're here with us today? Think about all the folks who are different from us and how we relate to them. Does our walk match our talk? As the author says, in doing this, you just might be entertaining angels. Then he goes on to remind us that we have a responsibility to those who are in prison and those who are being mistreated. Now, at the time this was written, Christians were being tossed into prison left and right, or they were being imprisoned by the Romans. So it may have had a different context then. Today, we don't have a tremendous amount of martyrs here in the United States of America being tossed into prison for sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. Thank God for that. There are other countries where they do. Don't think you want to go to Iran and preach Christianity. You maybe find yourself in your body and your head in two different places. But here in America, we don't face that, but we do have folks who are imprisoned with loneliness. We have folks who are imprisoned with illness. We have folks who are being ignored because they're different. We have folks who are being bullied day in and day out. And as followers of Christ, we are told to put their shoes on and walk a mile in those shoes for a day and just see what it's like. But we have the empathy and the love for those folks too. As followers of Christ, we have to understand what it's like to be in a prison that we can't escape from. To understand that you don't just say, quit being depressed. It doesn't work like that. Quit being lonely. Get out and do something. It doesn't work like that. We're to love each other and be there to help each other, to be the support system everyone needs. And if we can't be there for them, at least we need to be able to speak out and speak up, to be the hands and the voice of those who can't use their hands and voice. Justice. And then he goes on to state that if you're married, Honor your spouse and keep your marriage pure and holy. Marriage is a gift from God. And we all have the option to be married now. So marriage is a gift from God for all of us. Treat it like that. And if you're single, there's some purity rules for singles too. Pay attention to them. The next lesson we get, this is hard for us living in America because we all have more than so many people. We need to learn to be content with what we have. You know, that green-eyed monster looks across the room and says, so-and-so's got so much more than I do. They drive a better car, they got a bigger house, they have more money, they do this, they do that. But be content with what you have. You know, money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is. When money and stuff begin to take over first place in our lives, we end up breaking that commandment about not having any idols to take the place of God. Everything that we have belongs to God. Whether it's bountiful or scarce, everything we have belongs to God. He simply allows us to be stewards for the brief time that we're here on this earth. Learning to be content with what we have is a process. Sometimes we have to force ourselves to learn it. The writer does tell us that the lack of gratitude to God for what we do have is an affront to God. Jesus even told a parable about the servant that was given 10 talents, and one that was given 5 talents, one that was given 1 talent. It's about that. And finally, the author of today's passage asks us to remember our leaders. I choose to believe he's saying pray for our leaders. Remember our leaders and imitate their faith. Now the directive here is not to imitate the leader, but to imitate their faith. If your leader doesn't have the faith that you feel is worthy of following, then find a new leader. I would also urge everyone to remember that leaders are human too. We all have our shortcomings. We all have our flaws. We all have our weaknesses inherent to being human beings. So we have to cut our leaders some slack sometimes too. So I go back to the original claim that we're to imitate their faith, not their actions. If you turn back to the 11th chapter of Hebrews, it is a whole roll call. People commended for their faith, and every single one of them were weak and sinful human beings. But they had faith, and they were commended for it. So I think what we find in our lesson here at the end of Hebrews, which I think is one of the most exciting books of the Bible, it tells us all about Christ being our high priest and what he did. And by being our high priest, what we have to look forward to and how to live a Christian life and what's expected of us. And here at the end, in the 13th chapter, is a picture of what the ideal Christian community should look like. Might I say, the ideal Christian fundamental community. Those who are called and set apart that we know as Christians, who practice these ethical and moral and Christian ways of life, no longer find those 6 rules binding. They're not keeping us oppressed, but they're actually freeing because they allow us to be the person that we were called to be when we were converted. The old is dead, and the new has come. The difference for me then and now, it's not a list of rules that I must follow, but it's a list of rules I can follow because I'm free to do it. I read this passage not so much as a command, like you find in Exodus with the Ten Commandments, but as permission to be the fundamentalist I was called to be all along. No longer do I have a desire to be a part of that holier-than-thou huddle that's worshiping and praying and being obsessed with their rules and their regulations just to prove that I belong there. I'm quite content being a part of the community that's willing to express and share God's love openly and proudly and offer our sacrifices to God. As God did, out of love and compassion, pulled each of us into his arms and said, you belong to me now, and this is the way you need to behave. So yes, I am a fundamentalist, but only in the sense that I am free to live in the context of our lesson from Hebrews today. And I'm proud of that. But hey, until the rest of the world catches on,